It's season 11 of Heartland Highways, and for our first show, we're introducing you to all of the new people and places we have in store for you.
We've got a museum full of tanks and military memorabilia, a couple that collects soda products, stories about interesting groups of people like the Fort Lamont Rangers, the Bend Quilters, and the Illinois State Horseshoe Pitchers Association, and much more.
That's all coming up on our preview show for season 11, so stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to the 11th season of Heartland Highways.
It's hard to believe we're in our 11th season, but here we are and we're glad you're here with us. As always, we thank you for watching.
We always like to start the season with a look at the stories you'll be seeing, and in this show today we'll show you all of the people and places we plan to introduce you to throughout the next 12 episodes.
So let's get started with a few of the interesting places we stopped by this season. We were able to spend some time in a few different cities this year to do several stories at one time.
One of those places was Springfield, Illinois, where we visited Edwards Place and the Trotter Museum.
Part of the Springfield Art Association, Edwards Place is the oldest home in Springfield on its original foundation and was the original home of Helen and Benjamin Edwards.
More interesting yet is that the home has some strong ties to Abraham Lincoln.
This is the oldest house in Springfield on its original foundation. It was built in 1833 by a man who later, after his death, it turned out that he had fled his first wife in a pile of debts in New York, came through St. Louis, changed his name, married again, so he was kind of a bigamist, and come to settle in Springfield and reinvent himself. He was the first owner. He was here for 10 years, and then he sold it to the Edwards family. This is Benjamin and Helen Edwards, and Benjamin is a son of the governor of Illinois, Ninian Edwards, and a brother of Ninian Edwards Jr., who's married to Mary Lincoln's sister, so lots of family connections there.
Our second stop in Springfield was to a one-of-a-kind museum at Lincoln Land Community College, featuring the private collection of Philip and Mary Catherine Trotter. The Trotters' unique collection features pieces from their years of world travel. The museum regularly features special exhibits, workshops, and lectures that promote cultural awareness and bring other parts of the world to Lincoln Land Community College and the greater Springfield area. The Trotters' love for lifetime learning continues through the display and the permanent holdings at the college.
His purpose for leaving it to Lincoln Land Community College was that he wanted our students who may not be able to travel the world or even travel outside of the state of Illinois to be able to travel the world through his eyes, and hence the reason that we have the collection. I think that we were so pleased that Mr. Trotter saw the value of education, and it fits so closely with our mission to serve faculty, students, staff, and the community. And we serve students from youth to those who want to continue learning for a lifetime. And this gallery assists us in providing that for those individuals.
Our second one-town tour took place in Crawfordsville, Indiana. We spent a day there at the Rocky Armor Museum, Rotary Jail, and many other places along the way. Here's a little preview of our stop in the Athens of the Midwest. Crawfordsville, Indiana is widely known for its museums and art galleries. And this particular museum near downtown is bound to turn some heads.
The jail was originally built in 1881-1882. It was the first Rotary jail that was constructed in the United States. And so they were really taking a huge risk because this had never been tried before. It was a radical new concept. And it was based on the idea of railroad technology in terms of having a turntable, and then that you have a jail that is built on a turntable.
The design is unique, and less than 20 jails of this kind were built, let alone survive today. And the Montgomery County Rotary Jail is even more unique, as it has one feature that none of the other Rotary jails that are still standing have. It's the only one whose cell block still turns.
Fred comes from a long line of proud military service on both sides of his family. He served as a tank platoon leader in the Marines from 1949 to 1955, including the Korean War. His time in the military furthered his collecting interests. By 1982, he decided to turn his private collection into a museum, with a mission to preserve and share military history. In 2004, he moved the museum from just outside of Indianapolis to rural Montgomery County, not far from Crawfordsville.
It was truly divine guidance that I think brought us here. And we love the people in this area. We love the people in Crawfordsville have done so much to make us feel at home.
There's plenty to see in Crawfordsville, as there is in many of the towns we visit. Another one of those towns is Atlanta, Illinois. This quiet old Route 66 town caught our eye several years ago, so we went back to visit the town and see what they've been working on to draw in visitors.
Now, several years later, they're still at it, and the development they have accomplished is putting Atlanta and the Illinois section of old Route 66 back on the map in a big and nostalgic way. Take a look.
Take a prime location along Route 66, a smiling face on a water tower, some historic buildings and museums, a big statue, and a community looking to promote economic development. And what do you get? Atlanta, Illinois.
Well, you have to find what it is you got to sell, okay? And what we've got to sell is, first thing was Route 66. So now you start taking that and saying, what can we do with Route 66? What did it look like? What did it bring? And we've tried to change that experience from a drive-through experience to a walk-in experience.
We had this idea that rather than just institute another museum or put up another interpretive panel along the roadside that said, oh, this is what used to be here and here's how it used to be, what we wanted to focus on instead was, we think people want to drive along Route 66 and actually experience things the way it used to be done back in the heyday of the route.
Now, small towns are definitely the cornerstone of Heartland highways. Arcola, Illinois is no exception. We were able to find 2 stories there this year.
First, we met a group of traveling mural artists called the Wall Dogs. The Wall Dogs are comprised of artists from all over the world and travel throughout the country painting murals to help towns boost their tourism. Many of the murals carry historic significance to the city that is hosting the artists, and according to the men and the women in the group, once you come to a Wall Dog meet, you'll be coming back for more.
It's a town-changing event for us.
Every mural has a story behind it.
It all comes down to the passion for what we do. It's fantastic.
Bring together one central Illinois town with some blank walls and over 100 mural painters from around the world, and what do you get? A Wall Dog meet. In June of 2012, they descended upon Arcola, Illinois for a 5-day paint-a-thon that resulted in 15 murals in the downtown area. The term Wall Dog was a nickname given to traveling sign painters back in the day. The present-day Wall Dog movement began in 1993 in Allerton, Iowa. It was an opportunity for muralists to get together, paint, swap stories, and have some fun.
Our second find in Arcola is slightly different, but an equally fun group of people called the Lawn Rangers. This group began when some Arcola citizens decided they'd like to be part of the annual Broomcorn Festival parade. They took a talent inventory and decided that pushing mowers and twirling brooms was probably the best that they could do. So they formed a sort of drill team and have become a beloved parade tradition.
But basically we have no redeeming value whatsoever. We're just a social group. We'll take almost anyone into our ranks. They weed themselves out. Some people decide it's not for them, but for the most part, we've had great luck in growing our numbers. I think over 1,000 different people have marched with the Rangers at one time or another.
I think that's one of the key components of the group and why we've been able to expand membership. It doesn't require any talent whatsoever. Well, the fellowship is part of the, it goes hand in hand with the motto, you're only young once, but you can always be immature.
It's been a wonderful run, and I started just friends of friends, getting other friends to come join, so it's been great.
While we're on the topic of interesting people, there are certainly a few more that we came across this season.
Yeah, let's see. There's the Illinois Horseshoe Pitchers Association, Artco Acting Company out of Tuscola, the Fort Lamont Rangers of Palestine, and the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps. Another unique and special group we had the privilege of meeting this season were the quilters of Gee's Bend, Alabama.
We met 3 women from this small town who have turned the necessity of making quilts into art that has now made them famous the world over.
The elder people was already quilting, but they didn't know, like I didn't know, quilts was art. When Matt and Bill came to Gee's Bend, we showed them the quilts, and they said it was art. And that's the way the quilts began to move around. And he had us to continue to quilt. And the first place we went was Houston, Texas. And after we went to Houston, Texas, we've just been passing around in the world. That's it.
One of the best parts about our job here at Heartland Highways is meeting the people that we do and getting to tell their stories. And this season is full of different kinds of people with different talents. Pat Macklin is one of those people.
She slumps glass. What is slumping, you might ask? Well, take a look.
We melt wine and liquor bottles into hangings, like this one I just made. And we also do cheese trays in a mold, and we have several different molds that we do in a kiln.
Another interesting talent comes from Bruce Hannon of Urbana, Illinois. Bruce repairs and restores clocks.
That's right, and for this story, we had the pleasure of climbing inside the clock tower at the Champaign County Courthouse for a look at some of Bruce's work.
I'm not a collector, I'm a fixer. And gradually, though, enough people, so that's like 40-something years ago, gradually enough people found out that I did this, and there are not many people who do. And I got better and better at it as time went by. So I'm sort of the clock guy in town now.
We've seen just about every kind of collection on our show, but nothing like what Charlie Hughes has. He collects Baroque and Renaissance era musical instruments.
And not only does he collect them, he can play them all as well.
The instruments vary in size, shape, reed, and sound type. Some are quiet and were intended for small indoor ensembles. while others are bold and loud, meant for playing in outdoor venues. To better understand the instrument families, Charlie was kind enough to provide us with a demonstration, starting with the recorder, an instrument familiar to many.
The largest in our collection, the bass. So as you can tell from high to low, when these are played together, it will sound very much like an organ with a set stop.
A slightly different kind of musical instrument collection comes from our friend Mark Rubel.
Mark has all kinds of guitars ranging from the beautiful to the more plain and functional, but all of which he believes in being able to play and not just look at.
You know, one of the things that's great about the guitar in general is that it's an easy instrument for people to play. It's portable. And then when you electrify it, it allows people to amplify their personality. So I think it's the iconic instrument of the 20th century. Probably, you know, it's what made the immersion of rock and roll happen. And it's a lot of, I think, the popularity of the instrument is really directly traceable to the Beatles. And maybe not even so much to the Beatles as the Beatles fans. I think you ask just about anybody my age who plays music and you ask them what got you into it. They saw the Beatles on TV, and it might not have even been the Beatles, but all the screaming girls. And that was the attraction as much as anything.
Staying here with our friends at Eastern Illinois University, Jeff Boshart is the sculpture professor in the art department. We spent some time with him at his studio on campus and at his home in Charleston to learn more about what inspires him and his work.
And when you see these things outside and you walk up underneath them, they become somewhat overwhelming, although they're what I call transparent, hollow, empty boxes. Thebe. They also have other names. And it's the type of thing where I always take great delight in working with students, and I say, okay, look at that red lamppost over there. What do you see? And they'll go, well, I see the red lamppost. Is that all you see? We're taught to focus on what we're told to look at, and we miss everything that's around it. So by putting a sculpture in the environment, people say, what are you trying to capture? And I said, I'm capturing everything you see through these empty hollow boxes. If you're looking at this, you're not only seeing this, you're seeing the background, you're seeing the environment it's in. As you walk around it, it is like putting your head inside a picture. You rotate inside there, and you see everything through new eyes by putting everything in the space that holds nothing.
Another dynamic EIU person we had the pleasure of profiling is Brian Poulter. Brian has traveled the national road by motorcycle and chronicled it all through using photos on nothing more than his smartphone and a few apps along the way. The results are nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, I guess I'm strange in that I never go out thinking I'm going to make a bunch of money doing this, because the money or the pavement for me is what I learn. And so I've been teaching photography at Eastern for 20 years. If I did it the same way and I hadn't evolved in that, I would be boring myself when I teach. And so if you find something new about this thing that you love, you can transmit it and you can hopefully give the passion to other people. And you know, and Eastern expects me to stay current in my area or they won't be real happy with me. I mean, that's just an expectation of all faculty, but it's an expectation I have of myself. So the payoff for me is rekindling the excitement, new tool, new approach, new way to tell stories, and I end up teaching myself stuff. And sometimes when I go in the classroom, I'll look at how a student approached something, and I'll go, how did you do that? And they'll tell me, and I never thought of that. And that's the magic for me, is it just exploring it, learning. You'll never master photography. It's just impossible. There's just too much things to do in it.
And in case that's not enough EIU for you, we also had the chance to talk to several people involved in the EIU Building Memories exhibit, an annual project completed through a combined effort of the Historical Administration faculty and students, the university archives, and the general campus community. The exhibit features research, photos, and artifacts about what creates a collective memory for people who have come and gone at Eastern.
It looks at how the EIU community has defined itself through social, political, and cultural terms, which can be seen in things like the naming of buildings, landscapes, and memorials, as well as through current and forgotten traditions and memories. Shifting gears to collectors, Norman Skinner collects things that many people wouldn't think of as possible to collect. He collects old buildings that are usually in danger of being torn down. To date, he has nearly 20 structures on his farm near Perrysville, Indiana.
Norman moved most of the buildings to his farm himself and tells us that there's always something to do with all of those structures around. He also promises that you'll see things on his farm you won't see anywhere else. I'm pretty sure we actually saw a 4-horned sheep while we were there.
I think you're right. I'm pretty sure I saw that too.
Definitely a story to look forward to this season. Another interesting collection comes from our friend Dan Cruz. Dan collects memorabilia, literature, and much more from World War II.
He has a passion not only for collecting items, but more importantly, the stories of the people who fought in the war. The way Dan collects these artifacts is as unique as the collection itself.
He gets many of the items from people he knows and is very invested in knowing the history and the story behind each one.
I'm kind of a pack rat, and I'm kind of a magnet for some people, that they realize that you know, some families are not all that interested in keeping part of their family history. It doesn't mean a lot to them, and I don't mean to be critical about that. It's just that, you know, there are things that kind of slip away from me myself. But some people say, hey, you know, this is my uncle's or this is my father's, and we don't really know what to do with it, and it's going to hang out in the closet, and we'd like for you to have it. And so that means a lot to me, because they realize that I'm going to take care of it. As I say, maybe a good descriptor of me as an archivist, and someone who will kind of archive people's treasures. And it's something I would do. I mean, my goal, I would love to have some kind of public place where people could see this stuff on display all the time. I think that would be terrific.
Early in our filming season this year, we visited with Jan and Dan Ballard.
Now, Jan emailed us and told us about she and her husband's soda pop collection. Not limited to just one type of item or one brand, the Ballard's collection is wide-ranging, and they were happy to share it with us.
When we first started, if it was red and white, we bought it. We didn't care whether it was Coca-Cola or not. And we were running around with some friends that collected Pepsi-Cola, and we would buy the Coca-Cola stuff and they would buy the Pepsi stuff. Then they got to thinking, well, we kind of like some of this Coke stuff, and we felt the same way about Pepsi. But we particularly like anything that's got a character on it.
One brand with a character was Clio Cola, which created a bit of controversy in its day.
Their bottle graphics on the ACL bottles and the paper labels, it showed the lady's belly button, and they thought that was a little bit too much back then, so they did change some of the graphics. It's just something unique, something that attracted my attention, and like I said, it's just and because it was different than Coca-Cola and Pepsi.
Near Kansas, Illinois, we met Sid Justice. Sid repairs and creates gun stocks in the basement workshop of his home. Sid started out carving stocks by hand several decades ago and has since advanced to a machine he cuts out patterns on. Word spread quick for Sid, and that's what he made his hobby into a full-time job.
So I made my first carving machine in the late 70s. And that worked, but it was pretty slow. And as business picked up, I just kept buying better machines until I've got this one that suits my needs. So.
And now, Sid Justice from rural Kansas, Illinois enjoys a backlog of gun stock repairs and creation orders. Word of mouth spread so quickly when he got started that Sid was eventually able to make it a full-time job. His processes have also evolved from hand rasping and carving to machine-cut stocks mostly made from patterns.
One of our final collectors is Chester Higginbotham of rural Paris, Illinois.
Chester collects tractors, and let's just say that he has more than just a few.
I guess I kind of blame my dad for some of my blame it for me liking to restore old antique stuff. And, well, it's a hobby, and it keeps you out in front of that boob tube, I call it.
During World War II, when Chester was a young boy, it was hard to get new tractors, so he and his father continued to maintain and restore the ones they already had on their farm in Martinsville, Illinois. Now, Chester has about 50 tractors that run on his farm near Paris, Illinois, many of them Oliver brand. He restores them and displays some of them at a museum on his property. He also runs them in tractor pulls, parades, antique tractor clubs, and even uses some of them actively to farm his land. And to wrap up the show today, we leave you with a look at a few more stories to be on the lookout for this season.
Like the Holly Arboretum in Terre Haute, Indiana, the history of baseball in Mattoon, Illinois, the Effingham County Courthouse Museum, and some of the talent that comes across the stage at the Doudna Fine Arts Center here on the campus of Eastern Illinois University, as well as a few other stories coming up. Well, Kate, it's been a great season and I can't wait to share it with everybody.
There's a lot to look forward to, so we hope to see you tuning in for Heartland Highways this season. Took place in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Indiana. We spent a day there at the Rocky Museum.
Seem to be like...
Yeah. There.
Okay.
A little bit that way.
All right.
Putting Atlanta and Illinois section of Route... Ugh, sorry. Wow.
Let's do some...
I wrote this, so I've read it. One of the best... Sorry, dropped my cup. Thank you.